No one else would have. Okay. Did we get to the end of base? Where did we get to?
Close to it, I think.
Yeah, we got right.
I think at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I think we talked about it outside, but we actually didn't do it inside. Okay, so we were talking about the dream state. The Iker Nesa Purim is V'nada Dashnas HaMelech. Belaila hu Nada Dashnas HaMelech. That the king's sleep moved. And what's unique about that? Because the state of Gullus is a state of sleep. So the king, the Eibishter, should theoretically, al pi teva, be asleep, so to speak, during Gullus. And the Iker Nes is that the Eibishter, so to speak, woke up, even though, again, the natural state is that he should be asleep. So then we started discussing what sleep is. So what's the difference between a wakened state and a person who's asleep? All of the keiches and nefesh are there. The person is just as alive as they were when they were awake, but things lack order. There's a complete and total lack of order in the dream state, in the sleep state. So there's seichel, there's midas, there's all sorts of things, but kind of in ratzon, right? But they're not in an orderly way. And the Rabbi brought a mashal. We brought certain mashalim. Walking out of this classroom in a dream, you could walk out of this classroom straight into Fifth Avenue in New York, right? No problem. The other side of that door could be Fifth Avenue. In a dream, that could happen. In real life, that can't happen. And we'll see why, right? We don't understand why yet. We just understand the what of it, right? And therefore, Gullus is also a dream. Therefore, what? The priorities in Gullus are upside down. So that which seems important really isn't, and that which seems unimportant really is. So that expresses itself in all sorts of different ways. And the way that we're going to see now is relative to the Yidden, right? So the second line up from the bottom of the page, near the end of the line, last four words. This is also understood above. Just as we said in a dream state, so things happen in a completely haphazard way, and things that are important might seem unimportant, things that are unimportant might seem very important, etc. People can be found in different places. All sorts of opposite things can be found together, right? Either together mamish or in a hemshech, in a continuum. The continuum of the mashal was walking out the door into New York, so that can't happen in real life, but in a dream it could. So what's all this lamaila? What's all this from the Eibishter's point of view? Meaning, what's the collective dream of Gullus? Vadugma mizayuvan lamaila. The inyan hashenahu, what's the sleep? That she'ein nikar kaviyachol, it's not recognized. The Eibishter, so to speak, above, doesn't recognize. What does that mean? That means the world works in such a way that it's unrecognizable. The advantage of things that are really quite lofty. So it's as if, so to speak, a Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't recognize these things. Obviously he does, right? That's a silly thing to think he doesn't, but he acts as if he doesn't. Therefore, he allows the world that he powers and energizes to be a world where these things are not recognized. Right? Mihakesher the inyan hagolus v'zehu mihakesher the inyan hagolus im inyan hashena. This is the connection of golus to sleep. Canal shebizman hagolus inyan hashena l'mayla. It's the sleep above, so to speak. Ki sibas hagolus, the reason for golus, he is al yedezeh. Now, the Rebbe is not saying the reason of golus, that which caused golus. He's talking, why do we call the situation we're in now golus? What is it about it that is galuti? And what's the single most golusdik reality? She'ein nikeres as a maila di Yisrael. It's not recognized the maila of Yidden. The Yisrael him banim l'makim. Now, that's not recognized by the non-Jewish world. It's also not recognized by the Jewish world. The heim banim l'makim. Kamosha calls the banim etem lavai lokechem, your children of the Eibishter. V'al panim avadav shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. And even if we're not quite on the level of banim, we're still his servants. Kemaimer lechazal sayim kebanim kevadim. We say in Rosh Hashanah, shegam eved melech hu melech. Right? The Tanchuma says the eved of a melech is a melech. meaning the servant of a king is like a king. So now the simple expression of that is, if the servant of the king knocks on your door and tells you you have to do something, so you have to do it, right? The tax collector of the king knocks on your door, you just have to pay the tax. It's as if the king knocked on the door, right? There's also the more pneumistic Indian that the Eved is completely bottled to the melech. Lorak kim melech, it's not only that he's like a melech, which is what the Gemara in Shavuot says, but Chafadim Yon, the Rebbe is quoting in 27, the Tanchuma, right? Elo melech, mamish melech. Ubanim tzrichim yesh smuchim al shulchan aviyim. The natural state of children is to be at their father's table. V'chein avodim, also the natural state of avodim, al shulchan adoinim, should be at the table of their master. Whether they're at the table with the children or at a different table in the house, as we learned in Pierre Mishteyasar, we'll learn it again soon. But they should be in the house of the king, of the master. Vasiba lazeh, and the reason shegolu mial shulchan aviyim v'adoinam, and the reason they've been sent away from the table of their father or their master, hu inina sheina, that's the sleep, right? That's the state where she'ein nikar, it's not recognized kaviyachol, so to speak, l'maylo, above ha'ilui d'Yisrael, and that reality that, so to speak, a Kadosh Baruch Hu, again, what we said earlier is he makes himself as if he's asleep. In other words, he acts towards us and towards the world as if he's asleep. That means he's in a dream state. That means the reality down here reflects that dream state. And that dream state is that everything's topsy-turvy. And that's how Golus happens. Okay. So we saw, again, just the beginning of an understanding of the connection between Sheinos, sleep, and Golus. An unnatural, unorderly, haphazard state of reality. And that's Golus. Right? In Geula, so the chosen people would be treated a certain way. In Golus, anything can happen. That's a dream. Okay. So now one more little piece of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer before the Rebbe starts explaining things. Umamshich b'Maimer. Friedrich Rebbe continues in the Maimer after explaining the union of sleep and the connection of sleep to Golus and the notion of a dream state. Also explains why it is that we experience reality the way we experience it in a dream. In a dream, so to speak, everything's the same. Nothing has priority this over that. Right? Okay. It's interesting, here we are at the end of the dream state called Golus, about to enter into Geula, and that the whole world is in this state of equity. Everything's the same. Right? Everything's the same. There's no difference between anything. Okay, let's see. Ba'amshich b'Maimer. Zeh shebe'es hashena, that which at the time of sleep. Ein nicker mailis akechizel zeh. Why is it that at the time of sleep? In base, the Rebbe told us the what of sleep. What is it? How does it work? Now he's going to explain a little more the why of it. Why is it that it's hard to prioritize in a state of sleep? The Rebbe says an amazing thing. Ein nicker mailis akechizel zeh. It's not recognized the general loftiness of one maila, of one koyach relative to another koyach. Ubedugmas hakoyches, this is similar to the powers of the soul, k'meishem klulim betzem nefesh, when they are incorporated in the essence of the soul. Shesham, that there, kol hakoyches heim b'hashuvah, they're all in a state of absolute equality. What happens when we sleep? So when we sleep, our soul goes back to its source above. Okay, now there's a residue of the soul left down here to give vitality to the body. But that residue is affected by the basic experience of the soul. And where is the soul? The soul is above. What's it experiencing above? A state of absolute oneness. What does that mean? Everything's the same. There's no revealed reality of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus above. There's no revealed reality of Chochmah and Bina and Das. Why not? They're all in a state of absolute unity in their source. When that emanates downwards and is clothed in a body, and Elam Hazes, all these different powers of the soul are revealed, right? Just like, and we're going to see, the Rebbe's going to talk about it, just like in reality itself. All of reality, the source of all reality, is a state of absolute oneness, the Shem Echad. That Shem Echad emanates downward and it expresses itself in, for all intents and purposes, an infinite amount of differentiated reality. There's no end to how many different expressions of that godly light there are down here in El Mazar. Okay, what's the source of it all? Shem Echad. All comes in the same place. So in that place, what is it? It's in a state of absolute unity, absolute oneness. There's no differentiation. We talked about this earlier when I don't think anybody, but we talked in November, so when we learned Basi Legani here. So the Rebbe talks about Elam Atzilus being Gilui Helam. It's the revelation of that which was hidden. So what was hidden? In Sovev, in infinite godly light, what's hidden? 10 spheres. There's no 10 in infinite reality. It's just light. Right? Now, what's in there, so to speak, on some hidden level? 10 different expressions of light called the 10 spheres. Are they in a state of revelation? No. In Sovev, they're kalul be'echad. They're completely incorporated in oneness. Right? You can't see them. If you were to take a field trip to Sovev, so you wouldn't see 10 spheres there. You just see one aspect of infinite godly light. Okay. Similar to when you look at revealed light, it all looks the same. What is it really? Well, we know you can divide it into 3 colors very, very simply, and you can divide it into an infinite amount of colors in a more sophisticated way. Okay, because what's in that light? An infinite amount of colors in that light. Well, you look at the light, and it's beyond color. There's no color. Okay, true. But we know what's in there. It's just all hidden until when? Until it expresses itself in a kli, by reflecting off a kli. So you see the red of it, you see the blue of it, you see the yellow of it, or all the other different permutations of that. Okay, true. So too the nefesh. Nefesh has all these different powers. In its source, what do those powers look like? They don't. Just like in Atzilus, the infinite godly light comes into a state of Gilui. What's revealed in Atzilus? 10 spheres. Where were those 10 spheres? They were in a state of hiddenness in the infinite light of Sovev. Why? It's infinite light. There's no 10. There's no reality of 10. Infinite by definition is 1, because where does one thing end and the other begins? Well, if it ends and this one begins, then it's not called infinite, is it? Okay. So that's the state of Sovev, infinite godly light. What's in there? 10 spheres, all these different aspects of godly reality, but they're incorporated in a state of absolute oneness. How do I know they're, so to speak, in there? Well, when that light comes down and is clothed in kalim called spheres and Elam Atzilus, then all these different aspects of godliness are revealed. That's why Atzilus is called Gilui Helam. What's revealed in Atzilus? 10 spheres. Are there spheres above? Yeah, they're called spheres genuzes, hidden spheres. Right? But in Atzilus, they're revealed. Okay. So too the soul. All the powers of the soul are in a state of absolute oneness when the soul goes back to its source. Oh. So therefore, it's an amazing idea. Therefore, down here, how do we experience reality? It's all one. It's haphazard. What's higher, what's lower, there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. Because ultimately, up there is no difference between one and the other. Right? Once they come into a revealed state, there's a difference in intellect and the power of touch. Right? Intellect is obviously much more sophisticated, and the power of touch is much less sophisticated. Right? And if you had to do without one of them, I think you'd say, okay, I'll do without touch. I don't mind. If I can't feel something when I touch it, I can do without that. Right? Right? But I don't want to do without intellect. I don't want to do without sight. I don't want to do without hearing. And I think of those 3, we'd probably rank them that way. Right? Intellect most important, right? I mean, no one wants to not see, okay, beseder, but I'd rather be able to think than not see than not see and not be to see and not be able to think. Okay.
You could become a president.
That's true. That's true. Dark. You're right. I can't argue with that one. Okay. I'll say a l'chaim on that. I don't know what to say on that. Right? We all thought the emperor has no clothes was just a story, but we're living through it, watching it happen. No. On top of the ball. Yeah. Right. Unbelievable. And what's really astounding, there's still 30% of the people who say he's doing a good job. Who are these 30%? Who are they? I can get that you hate the other guy. I have no problem. But who are these people? Wow. Unbelievable. It's absolutely astounding. It's a sociologist's dream. What's going on now to study it? Study it's astounding. Okay. So up there it's all one. So down here, when a person's in a state where basically their soul is connected to its source above, therefore it's experiencing this absolute achdus, what's called Shem Klulim be'etzem hanefesh, they're incorporated in etzem hanefesh in the state of oneness. So then the effect of that on the aspect of the soul that's down here is the soul down here also doesn't experience the orderly differentiation of reality and prioritization of reality. That's a dream. Wild. Now, the Pneumius, that's Haman. Haman made a mistake. He was wrong, but what did Haman say? If I can get to a place completely lemaila, mitam vadas, then Yidden and non-Jews are all the same. So what did he do? How did he want to kill the Jews? What did he rely on?
Lies.
A lot. A lottery. It's called Purim, the holiday. What's a pur? It's a lot, right? Lottery. What's a lottery?
Chance.
The smartest person, the dumbest person, the strongest person, the weakest person, the tallest person, the shortest person, the fattest person, the skinniest person, the nicest person, the nastiest person. They all have exactly the same chance in the lottery. Meaning, let's get to a place, Haman said, where the difference between Yidden and non-Yidden doesn't exist. It's all one. He didn't understand that there's a place in Atzmos where there's only a Yid. That he didn't understand, but he had a pretty sophisticated understanding of what might be a reasonable thing to do. On that level, it's all chance. Meaning what? It's all the same. So up there, I've got a fighting chance. Down here, what did his family say to him? You're starting with the Jews, you don't have a chance. Right? That's what they say it to him in the Megillah. It's wild, right? That's what they say to him. Mm-hmm. But he was trying to go up there. Didn't work. Okay, so that's what the Rebbe is saying here about the Frierdiker. The Rebbe is quoting the Frierdiker Rebbe. Shesham, there, second line, in Gimel. Kol ha-keiches ein b'shva. V'hainu. The inyan hisalmus ha-keiches shebeis hashena. The whole idea of the concealment of the powers of the soul at the time of sleep. So when you look at someone sleeping, they're just this lump, right? They might be snoring, but I mean, they're not doing much. Okay, but we know that everything's there. Okay, everything's there, but everything isn't there in the same state it is when they're awake, right? So there is a concealment of the basic keiches hanefesh. If someone came to earth, right, and started studying human beings, and the only human beings he studied were ones that were asleep, he would not have a very good idea as to what a human being is about, right? I mean, that's not exactly what we're about. Okay, now it might be there's some people we wish they would sleep 24 hours a day because when they're awake, they don't exactly help the world. Okay, Seder. But that being said, awakened state is obviously much more who we are than a sleeping state. So there's a definite hisad, there's a concealment of the keiches, shebeis hashena. Huma, why is that? Masha keiches misailim mistalkim l'shorshem, they go up to their source. Etzem hanefesh, biyad chaf gid ruchi. right? Say it. I'm giving my soul over to you. And we are rejuvenated up there. And then we come back down. Umizeh muven gam banimshal. Now there says an amazing thing. Also in the nimshal, also in the analog. What's this? Why are we talking about our sleep? So to speak, the Eibishter is asleep in Golos. What's that? The inyan is almus, shebezman Golos. The notion of the concealment of godliness at the time of Golos. Sheina. Humasha giluyim. These different states of godly revelation that should theoretically be revealed in Eilam Hazeh because they're the source of reality in Eilam Hazeh, but they're not revealed in Eilam Hazeh in a time of Golos. Where are they? Misailim l'makarim. Sleep. They're back in their source. They're not able to be revealed here, so they revert back to their source. Now, we saw that, interesting enough, in Leisa Mishakela, when the Rebbe was talking about what happens to the Or when a person doesn't use the Kli properly. So we talked about the Or being Mistalik Mina Kli and reverting back to its source. Right, okay, well, that's what the Rebbe is talking about here. That Or is destined to be revealed in Eilam Hazeh. But it can't be revealed in Eilam Hazeh because Eilam Hazeh is not in a state of revelation. The Kli is not able to reveal that Or because there's a problem down below. Okay, so what happens to the Or? It reverts back to its source. Just like when we're asleep. Where does our neshama go? Back to its source. That's really astounding. Masha gilu misailim va'ad la'atzmus. Go back to their source in atzmus. Ukiyadua, Maimer Zayar. The Zayar says, Ala pasuk in Yirmiyahu, ki enenu, God isn't, so to speak. The kuchibiku solak la'elo. What do you mean he isn't? He went up above. Sha'ala lim keme. Went back to his source. Cheder lifnim cheder, chamber within chamber. So what's left down here, so to speak? The residue of godly energy sufficient to keep the world alive in this sleep state. Enough to keep the world existent. But the world's not really in awakened state. It's not really showing what it's really all about, because what is the world truly? It's a Gan. It's a place where the Eibishter is revealed in a very powerful way. That's the essential state of the world. But in Golos, the world is not in that state. So just like a human being, when they're asleep, they're not really who they are. It's all there, but they're not really who they are. So how is it that they're still alive? There's a residue of the neshama in there, giving them their vitality. So too the world. There's a residue of godly energy maintaining the basic existence of the world, but it's as if the world is asleep. And the essential godly light that should power the world and be revealed in the world, just like those essential powers of the soul that power a person and should be revealed in the person, and they are when the person's awake. And as those levels of godliness will be revealed when the world is, so to speak, awake in a state of geula. But in a state of golus, those powers are concealed. They go back to their source, and there's a residue of that maintaining the basic existence of the world, just like there's a residue of the soul maintaining the basic existence of the person when they're asleep. So then what does the world look like? A dream state. What's that? It's all the same. Nothing matters. There's up, down, left, right. It's like there's no priority. This is just as important as that. What difference does it make? Well, that's the world in Golos. That's what it looks like. Why does it look like that? Because the world's in a dream state. Just like reality looks like that to us in a dream. Okay, but even when we're awake, that's what reality looks like. Why does reality look like that to us on a spiritual level? Because we're in a dream. I can connect to the wakened state by virtue of learning Torah and understanding what's really up and what's really down and what's really right and what's really left. Okay, but the world itself will express, basically nothing matters. It's all the same. This is just as important as that, right? Or even more important. Now that says an interesting thing about Golos. Let's see. V'hainu, the inanis almusha bezmana Golos. This notion of concealment, bezmana Golos, that the light's not revealed, it's only relative to the reality below. That what? Shebezmana Golos mistalika or lamaila. That in the time of Golos, the or ascends above. The Eina Meir Lamatan, it doesn't shine below. Shalochin nasa gullus. Therefore, there's gullus. Just like that's why there's sleep. Avalagabi or atzmai. What about the light itself? The godliness itself. Is it on a lower level in the time of gullus or on a higher level in the time of gullus? How about your soul? Your soul, when you're asleep, is it on a higher level or a lower level?
Seems like a higher level.
Higher level. It's connected to its source in a more powerful way. We're not talking about what mitzvahs do in terms of connecting. We're just talking about the existential reality of the neshama. When's the neshama most powerfully connected to its source? When we're asleep. What did the Yidden want to do at Matan Torah? Sleep. That's how we'll connect to the Torah most powerfully. We want to connect to above, let's go to sleep. When we sleep, we're connected. When we're awake, it's hard to connect. When we're asleep, we're connected. I might not be so conscious of the connection, but we're very powerfully connected. Okay? When we're asleep, we plug the phone in. It's connected to its source. When we're awake, the phone's doing all its stuff, but it's losing energy because it's not so connected. Right? And then we plug it in at night. Okay, so that's what we do to ourselves. We plug ourselves in. There's not a lot happening, okay, but in terms of the existential reality, we're more powerfully connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So too, the Rebbe just said an astounding thing about Gullus. The godly light that's ultimately supposed to power the world is more powerfully connected to the Eibishter in time of Gullus than in the time of Gula, because in time of Gula it's down here, in times of Gullus it's up there. Oh. So there are certain advantages to sleep. There's disadvantages also, obviously. Why? Maisu Iker. The Iker is to bring about a revelation of Elokus down here. But in terms of just connecting to God, when are we more connected? Sleep. Go to sleep. You'll connect to Him in a very, very powerful way. Not the way He wants, but very powerful. Relative to the light itself, Dafka Bizmana Golus. Specifically in Golus, Usolik Leila. The godly light responsible for the existence of the world is more powerfully connected to its source in a time of Golus than in a time of Gula. That's what the Rebbe just said. Like you are more powerfully connected to the Eibishter when you're asleep than when you're awake. Why? Because that's where your neshama is. Your neshama goes back to its source. We say it. It's not like this is esoteric information. Every single Jew who says anything, praise, says Biyad Chavkid Ruchi, right? And everybody sings Adon Lama Sher Malach Meter, right? That's not the niggin they sing, but you know. And what do we say in Adon Elam? Biyad Chavkid Ruchi. They see Shun, Ma'ira. And I get up. Dafka Bizman Golus Solik Leila, but Dugmas Siluk, similar to the elevation, the Shena, Ba'adam Atachten, Shasiluku, Raklagavi Aguf. The effect on the neshama, the fact that the neshama seems to be dormant, that's only from the vantage point of the goof. Why? Shor Nefesh Mistalak me a goof, because the light of the Nefesh has left the goof. Avalagavi a Nefesh, mitzad the Nefesh itself, Harayadarabba, au contraire. Dafka Beisa Shena, a Nefesh Eila Lamaila, V'sheyev V'slachayim. The nefesh gets energized by sleeping. Why? Because it goes back to its source, connects, gets juiced up. Right? As they say, when you throw oranges at the shul, what happens? All the Jews come out. Okay. Why? That's what the Frida Rebbe says. Now the Rebbe is going to explain it all to us. Ubirin. That's what it used to, right? So the Rebbe says a mimer, especially a Mukadik mimer. But the Rebbe will quote the mimer of one of the previous Rebbeim, bring us all the information of the mimer, explain it basically, but there'll be a running commentary on the other mimer. And then the Rebbe says, okay, what does this all mean? Now this is the Rebbe speaking, mamish. Absolutely incredible. Ubir inyan. Hine, not hine. Klolas seder ishtalshlus. The basic notion of the downward emanation of godly light into this world, is very similar to the different levels of the powers of the soul. And that's what we were talking about before, right? That just like your soul is, the Rebbe didn't say in the previous Kabbalah, the Rebbe only said about the Keiches and Nefesh that are Klul in Betzim and Nefesh. He didn't talk about the godly light that powers the world being Kalul above. We talked about it, he didn't, right? So, Betzim and Nefesh, when you sleep, what happens? So the powers of your soul that generally are found down here, clothed in your body, powering your body, retreat back to their source in Etzim, are reconnected to that, vitalized by that, re-energized by that, and then they come back down into the body when you wake up. Neshama, right? Meidani lifanecho. You returned it. What do we mean? Exactly what we said. You returned it. It wasn't here, and now we put it back. Why? Rabbi Emunah Secho. Because you have a lot of Emunah in me. You think I'm going to do the right thing. You trust me. So you give me life. You give me the opportunity. Which is amazing. God has unbelievable patience. And belief in us. If we believed in him as much as he believes in us, we'd be in good shape. The kameshik the keiches and nefesh, just like in the powers of the soul, the beginning of the existence of these powers of the soul, he kameshem klulim benefesh, as they are all incorporated in a state of absolute oneness in the soul itself. Shishamim kulam bashva, they're all the same. And afterwards, they're drawn down in a state of revelation, to be clothed in the limbs of the body. And dafka there, vaz dafka, specifically then, then there's differentiation. Right? True. So, would you necessarily, if you were to look at the neshama itself, up in its source, whatever that looks like, which obviously we can't imagine. Okay, so you're looking at the neshama. Do you necessarily see the power of sight, the power of hearing, the power of movement? No, you just see energy. You see life, chayis. And it's chay be'etzim, right? We've talked about this before, and it's so important to appreciate. It's chay be'etzim. What's chay be'etzim mean? It's so high that anything it touches gets chayis. It's so alive that everything it touches gets life. This is chay. It's not chai be'etzim, because I can't give life to the book by touching it. Right? If my neshama were to touch that book, the book would come to life. Whatever that means, I don't know what a live book looks like, right? But whatever it happens, so that book would come to life, right? Whereas if my hand touches the book, so nothing happens, because this thing's chai. It's not chai be'etzim. It's chai because something else gives it chayis. What's that? That which is chai be'etzim, the neshama, right? So then when the neshama touches something, it gives it chayis. Chassidim say chassid has to be chai be'etzim. Everything we touch, we give life to. Why? Chayel. When do we start? Chayel. Baal Shem Tov, Alter Rebbe, chayus. Chai be'etzim. Similar, interesting enough, in Gashmis, which the doctor can obviously explain much better than me. But how do we start? Don't we start as one cell, Doc? Right? What's in that cell? Everything. It's all there, which is absolutely astounding, right? It's all there. Can you see any of it? No, of course not. It's in a state of absolute hashva'ah. All the same. All comes from that one cell. And then that cell just multiplies, right? Divides, multiplies, subtracts, and adds. Does arithmetic. Right? I wasn't so good at arithmetic, Doc. Right? As long as it doesn't do trigonometry, I'm okay. Gets the trig, leave me out. Okay. Fine. Okay. So it divides and it splits and it whatever, and you end up with this unbelievably sophisticated creature that is, billions of things all happening together, held together by this layer of saran wrap called skin, that we don't blob all over the place. Okay. Amazing. Absolutely astounding. But ultimately, where do we all come from? A cell. It's all the same. In the source, it's all one. And then as it goes through its own Seder Ishtalshalus, so then that little creature starts developing all these things. And you will, that's what Hashem, when your wife is pregnant, you will follow the development and you'll look at the pictures of, what does he, she look like now? So, it's this big. It's like crazy. There's like these big, they're not mamish eyes, but there's like these things that show up pretty early, yes. Right? Like they look sort of like Martians, like we would imagine Martians look. I mean, I don't know what Martians look like because I don't think there are any, but so it's hard to know what they look like, right? But right? They're just the strangest looking creatures down there. And then all of a sudden these little bumps start appearing out the side and they end up being arms and legs. And then eyes develop and ears develop and a nose develops. And it's what makes birth so hard is Jews have this big, huge nose and they can't.
That's where it gets stuck.
Yeah, it gets stuck. The poor woman has this, Right, okay. Absolutely miraculous. It's called nature, but it's completely miraculous. It doesn't make any sense, and it just happens. I mean, it happened, Baruch Hashem, and almost all the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't. The fact that it ever works is completely just ridiculous. I mean, there's a gynecologist over there. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever that it works, that all this stuff actually happens the way it's supposed to happen in the way it happens. It's just not normal. And the little tentacles, the little bean sprout nerves grow and they attach to the part of the brain they're supposed to attach to. And how do they know where they're supposed to go? And how does the brain not go, get away from me? Leave me alone? Who knows? Unbelievable. Okay. So that's all in Gashmias. So that's all a mush of what happens in Ruchnius. What happens in Ruchnius? Everybody's sourced in a place of absolute oneness, and that oneness comes down and ultimately emanates downward, and that's the each individual person. It can be understood that way, mitzad keiches and nefesh, and the world at Bechlal can be understood that way, because the world itself is in this state of absolute oneness, or echad, that ultimately emanates downward, starts being mislavish and kelim, and that or ends up being expressed in, for all intents and purposes, an infinite amount of stuff. Amazing. That's Seder Ishtalshalus. That's what Rabbi is talking about. Dine, Klola Seder Ishtalshalus, but Dugmas the darkest the Keiches and Nefesh. The Kamesh Bekeiches, just like the Keiches and Nefesh, Haschalos Metzias Keiches, the beginning of the existence of the Keiches, who Kameshim, Klulim Benefesh. They're all incorporated in the soul, Shisham, Hem, Kulam, Bashva. They're all in a state of absolute equality. The Achar and afterwards, Nimshokim Begilui, they're drawn down in a revealed state, Lislavish Bevaria Guf, to be clothed in the limbs of the body. Va'az Dafkin, then specifically Nasem Binyan Ischalkus, then there's all sorts of differentiation: arms, ears, eyes, nose, feet, toenails. Ubegufes Agiluyim and Bekeichas Agiluyim. And in these revealed powers, Gufa Yesh Kama Ifanim, there's different expressions, different types, different ways of expressions. Kamei Shehem Begilui, as they are Begilui, Beifin Masuda, in a very orderly way. Be'esh Adam Er, right? When a person's awake, Ukamei Shem Be'elam, and also when they're in a hidden state. B'matzav Shoshena, when a person's asleep. Va'ad, these powers can actually be even in a third state, not just awake and asleep, but sometimes in a state of fainting, which is deeper than sleep. So when a person's asleep, you can wake them up with a loud noise. When a person fainted, they might be really out. So too above, there's all these different levels. Chazal say, the Rebbe says you can probably find it in Medrash Tehillim, right? What do Chazal say? Ma neshama mamales aguf, just like the neshama fills the body, kacha Kadosh Baruch mamales olam, so Kadosh Baruch Hu fills the world. What's that? That's mamale. or mamale. The Eibishter is the neshama of the world. Now, there's a difference between the neshama filling the goof and the Eibishter filling the world. The neshama fills the goof, but the neshama is not the source of the existence of the goof. It's the source of the chayus of the goof, the vitality of the goof, and not the existence of the goof. The goof exists because of the godly light giving it life, not giving it existence, not the neshama. The neshama doesn't give the goof existence. It gives it life. When the neshama leaves the goof, there's still a goof. We bury it. Okay, so it gives the goof life. The Eibishter gives the world existence, not just life, also existence. It's the source. If there's no godly light there, there's no existence of the world. If there's no neshama there, there's still a goof. Just, it's not alive anymore. Okay, so there is a difference between the two. But there's also similarity. Just like the neshama powers the body, so the Eibishter powers the world. There's a level of godly light clothed in the world, giving the world power, but also giving the world its essential existence. Das cholas spheres, the beginning of the spheres, who kameshem klulim b'arein baruch. The beginning of the spheres is as they are incorporated in a state of oneness, not 10, one. But Ein Sof, in infinite godly light. V'shamim l'maylam yizchalkus. There they're beyond differentiation. L'achar shenimshochim b'atzilus, and after they're drawn down into Atzilus, which is called Gilui Ahelim, right? They come into a state of revelation. Even though Atzilus is the world of oneness, interestingly enough, it's also the world where 10 happens. God's so one, he can be 10 and he's still one. So Atzilus is called Elam Ha'achdus relative to everything below it, because it's a world of absolute godliness. There's no creation in Atzilus. It's just creator, not created. Where does created begin? That's called Elam Abriya. Okay, so it's a world of Achdus, a world of oneness. All 10 spheres are completely incorporated, one in the other. But they have a separate, well, separate's the wrong word, but we're limited. They have their own separate independent existence. Chesed's chesed, gvura's gvura. But they're completely incorporated one in the other. So there's chesed shebegvura and gvura shebechesed. They're in a state of absolute achdus, absolute oneness. But there are 10. So even though it's a world of oneness, of unity, but there still is a state of limitation and differentiation. And how is that expressed? Well, that's expressed very, very clearly by the statement in Sefer Yetzirah regarding what happens in Elam Atzilus. Eser v'lei tesha, eser v'lei chadasa. 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. There are 10 spheres. 10. Not 8, not 12, 10. A specific limited number. That's what there is. Va'az davka, and there specifically nikeres mailas spheres zualzu. And what's revealed in Atzilus? The different milas of each sphere. So we understand how Chokhmah is a level that ultimately is beyond Bina, to the extent that Bina is the expression of Chokhmah, not the other way around. There's Havein b'Chokhmah and there's Chakeim b'Bina. That's true. And there's Chesed shebegvura and Gvura shebechesed. But Chesed's Chesed and Gvura's Gvura, and they both have their milas. You can't do without either of them. Right? But they have their milas. Right? Okay. And Malchus is Malchus, which is the repository of all of them. So it's on a certain level, a lower level. It has the highest source. It's sourced in Keser. Okay. But on a revealed level, it's lower than the other spheres and is the repository for the light of all the other spheres. So there's what to talk about in the realm of spheres. Higher levels, lower levels, different expressions. Chesed's not Gvura, and Gvura is not Chesed. Umikoshik, and all the more so, Kishem Nimshochim Beilumis, Bia. All the more so when those 10 powers are drawn down into the worlds of Bia, Bria, Tzira, Sia, Shalamata, Mi'elam Achdus, that are below the world of unity. Sha'azhem B'Yischalkus Yosef, then there's even greater differentiation. Because in Elam Atzilus, there's 10. Okay, now obviously those 10 can mean more than that, but there's 10. In Elam Abriya, How many angels are there in Elam Abriya? A lot more than 10. Right? How about Elam Yetzirah? Oh, lots down there. Legions and legions. Right? How about Elam Hazeh? Oh, basically, infinite amount of stuff down here. Much more differentiation. Where's it all coming from? It's coming from a world called Atzilus, which is a world of Achdus. Where's that coming from? That's coming from a level of Ein Sof, which is L'mayla Mikol Yischalkus, was beyond any differentiation. A world of absolute oneness. There's not 10 there. And from there it emanates down the notion of differentiation in Elam Hazeh. And what's one of the notions of differentiation in Elam Hazeh? It's so absolutely clear, and we'll see this and we'll stop. The Beis HaMikdash, Makam Hachi Muvchai Shebelam. There's a place called the Beis HaMikdash, which is completely different than the rest of the world and much holier than the rest of the world. It's the most choice place in the world. Such that, from there the light goes out to all of the world. The source of all of the light and all of the vitality of the whole world. Wow. Okay, so in the world there's absolute differentiation between more important places and less important places, more holy places, less holy places. Also in time. Differentiation in time, holy times, less holy times. Right? The Zohar asks why it is that we have to bench in chutzlans. Why isn't benching a mitzvah tluya ba'aretz? Because what's the source of the mitzvah of benching? Okay, keep saying the pasuk. Al ha'aretz hatova asher nazon lach. You should eat and be satisfied and bench to Hashem for the good land He gave you. What's the good land He gave you?
Here.
Eretz Yisrael is the good land He gave you. So why is benching not a mitzvah? Mitzvah that's only done in Eretz Yisrael. If you eat wheat grown in Eretz Yisrael, then you should bench. If you eat wheat grown in Iowa, so you shouldn't bench. Why? No, that's not Eretz Yisrael.
You're still elevating it.
Seder, I'm still elevating the apple I eat in Iowa also, but I don't take Trumas and Maestros from it.
Should you just say Mazaras? And you
Don't say anything. Why should you bench? Why should you say anything? Huh? I understand. The source of the mitzvah says Allah Arts Hashem Asamas. I understand. You don't take Trumas and Maestros. Isn't it nice to take Trumas and Maestros and thank God for the apple that you grew on your farm in Iowa? It's very nice. Are you chayiv? No. Trumas and Maestros is Shaykh Eretz Yisrael. Why? It says Beferish, it's Shaykh Eretz Yisrael. Does that make sense? Why should it make? Who cares whether it makes sense? That's what the pasuk says. The pasuk says there's something called Trumas and Maestros in Eretz Yisrael and nowhere else. So you do not take any Trumas and Maestros on fruit grown in British Columbia. British Columbia apples, you can just pick it off the tree, take it into the house, and eat it. You know, so you can also pick it off the tree and eat it. You don't have to take Trumas and Maestros until you take it in the house. Okay, so those lemons out there, you want to eat those lemons? So eat them outside. You don't have to worry about Trumas and Maestros. You bring them in, you're chayav now. Trumas, Maestros, Sheni, it's a big deal. Those big, huge, beautiful lemons growing right here in the yeshiva. Okay, so what if those lemons were grown in Iowa? There's no such thing. I understand. God didn't grow them in Iowa? Of course He did. Chayav Trumas and Maestros? No. Why not? I don't know. God decided that's Shaykh Eretz Yisrael. So this pasuk says, you would think that benching should be something that's relevant only to Eretz Yisrael. That doesn't mean that you don't that God didn't create the food that's grown everywhere else, but there's certain halakhic responsibilities that you have in Eretz Yisrael that you don't have in other places. Well, okay. The Zohar asks such a question because the Zohar is not stuck in little boxes. It can think out of the box. So it asks the question. Right? What's the answer? So it says, since all of the bracha in the world comes down into the world through Eretz Yisrael, so therefore, all of the bounty comes into Eretz Yisrael and spreads out to the rest of the world. So when you're eating a piece of bread that was grown, that was made from wheat grown in Minnesota, or in Saskatchewan, so you are ultimately enjoying the benefits of the bracha that came through Ha'aretz HaTova She'nasan Lach. That's what the Zohar says. And that's why you're chayav to bench in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, so there's places that are holier. What are they called? Well, we're sitting in it right now. Right? Do I feel it? Okay, I mean, there's definitely, I think most people are sensitive to a little difference in Eretz Yisrael than any other place in the world, but I mean, it's not like it hits you over the head. Right? And the longer you're here, it seems the more people start acting like it's anywhere else. Right? So let's just find a period. We're not going to find a period, so we'll stop it. Right? The nimshach beya, sorry. The oilam mitzad atzmei, the world mitzad itself, whom oilam miloshin helam v'hester. The world itself is a world from the language of helam and hester, which means concealment. The word oilam means concealment. The nimshach bar or, and it's drawn into that world or from where? Mi beis hamikdash, from the beis hamikdash. Shehu nishma sa'olam. It's like the neshama of the world. Oh, wow. And therefore, if there's no Beis HaMikdash, the world sure looks like a dark place. Because all of the vitality is supposed to be drawn into the world. It's like you've taken the neshama out of the world. Well, that's exactly what happened, right? It's like we're in a sleep state. So the neshama has left the world and the world's in a dream state. But dugmas, let's finish the paragraph, the parentheses, and we'll stop. But dugmas inyan ishtalshlus b'spheres, like the downward emanation of light in spheres. The sphere tachtoina, the lower sphere, mekabelis, receives mi sphere shalamaylu mimena. Right? From the sphere above it. Oh, there's a period in the next line. Va'az nikar gam, then when the Beis HaMikdash is here, nikar gam amayla di Yisrael, the Maila of Am Yisrael, the Maila the Bani Matem Lavai Lakechem, the Maila the Avadayhem, they're my servants, Avadim they're Manim Lashem Adenu. And that's when we're awake. If that's not the case, then it's like we're asleep. Okay, stop there. We'll go weiter on Sunday.
Thank you.